Hello friends, I'm your storyteller, and today I'm going to take you on a journey through strange stories that won't leave you unsettled, even when you're lying in bed, trying to fall asleep. Before we begin, be sure to hit like and subscribe, so you don't miss out on the next mysterious and scary stories. This is the most precious gift, giving me more motivation to continue telling stories. Now, close your eyes, relax. Let the sound of rain lead you into another world. In a terrifying moment, I began to feel that I was no longer simply doing research. Everything around me, from mysterious notes to conversations I couldn't remember, seemed more than a coincidence. I am slowly being drawn into an inexplicable world where not only time but also my own memories are being distorted. One night, after I began to feel increasingly clear signs of change in myself, I decided to continue with my investigation, even though I was filled with fear. It felt like my every move was being watched, and eerie sounds, soft tapping from places I couldn't identify, had become inevitable. Every time I turned off the light, I felt a faint presence, as if something was waiting for me in the darkness. An intense fear enveloped me, and I knew, every time I looked at these pages, I was getting closer to secrets I never wanted to know. And then, one rainy evening, I decided to continue searching for answers. The room was dark, and the only sound was the pouring rain outside. I turned on the recorder again. The words from the old typewriter appeared again. This time, it's not just the usual quotes, but creepy warnings that seem to be planning a horrifying event. The last paragraph seems to be engraved in my mind: the search never ends. Each answer is a door to more questions. And you can't go back. Unable to bear the silence, I turned on the light, only to see the silhouette of a person standing in front of my door. Sweat drenched my spine, while my heart pounded. A heavy, incomprehensible feeling filled the room. I turned around, but no one was there. There is only darkness. That was the moment I realized that entities don't just exist in fairy tales or ancient legends. They can hide in everyday objects, seemingly harmless memories, and sometimes, they can travel through time, space, and even ourselves. As I continued to write about the strange events that happened, I began to feel like a part of the story itself. The words, the unspoken questions that I couldn't answer, all merged into a closed loop that I couldn't escape. The darkness is not only a hiding place for creatures I cannot see, but also a place I cannot escape from myself. Even though I tried to fight my fear, I knew that one day, I would have to face the shadow standing right behind me. And then, will I still be myself or just a part of this dark force? My story is not over yet. Fear still awaits me in the unexplored darkness. Strange sounds kept coming, and I, whether I wanted it or not, had to continue on this path. The road that I can't turn back from. From that moment on, I no longer knew clearly the line between what was real and what was an illusion. Memories of lost moments are like fragments in a broken picture. Why was I standing there, in the kitchen, looking at a plate of frozen food I had no memory of preparing? Why do I feel like I'm stuck in a nightmare that I can't get out of? One night, as I continued to search my apartment for any trace, I discovered a small diary, hidden under the carpet. Flipping open the first pages, I saw familiar words, my own notes, but something was very different. These notes are not like the way I normally write. They are filled with anxiety, endless questions, and strange passages that cannot be explained. There is a passage I cannot forget: we are just memories written on pages, reflections that no one can erase. When darkness comes, everything will be erased, and you will be a part of it, never to leave. The coldness of these words makes me tremble. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was writing for me, as if these words weren't my idea, but another force controlling everything. That feeling became more and more obvious, making me unable to distinguish between myself and my shadow anymore. I decided to drop everything, leave this apartment, where strange things were taking over my life. But when I turned my back, I realized there was no way out. Every time I open the door, I find myself standing at a crossroads, and no matter where I go, I always end up back where I started. That shadow, that entity, always follows me, no matter how hard I try. Soon, I realized that there was no escaping my own shadow. The days filled with questions still linger. The memories, however faint, continue to haunt me, and I couldn't tell whether I was living in one reality or had completely lost myself in another world over which I had no control. Strange messages and inexplicable images continue to appear, and cannot be erased. Finally, I realized that I had become a part of this story, a story of strange memories, unexplained secrets and never-ending obsession. The shadow has become an indispensable part of my life. And I know, whether I like it or not, I can never escape it. This story, like a never-ending spiral, will continue to haunt me forever. When I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt like a piece of this story was missing. I wondered if everything was just a misunderstanding created by my mind, or if there was something truly manipulating the world around me, from the notes in my diary to the inexplicable changes in reality. Unable to believe what was happening, I returned to my office with an inexplicable feeling of confusion. The documents are still there, detailed records of events that I cannot remember, but know clearly. It seemed like things were intruding into my life that I had no control over. The ancient secrets not only haunted me, but also dragged me on a journey I couldn't stop. Back in my room, I didn't dare sleep. Every sound, every breath scared me. It felt like an invisible force was watching, waiting, listening to my every thought, dragging me into a war that I couldn't win. My own shadow sometimes appears in the mirror, but not like before, it is no longer me. That shadow, which seemed to have its own consciousness, was observing me, following me. While I was trying to find an explanation for these strange events, one night I sat in front of the Ouija board. But this time, the strange thing is that it doesn't move anymore. No planchette, no answer. However, on a piece of paper nearby, I discovered a new line: "You opened the door, and now that door cannot be closed." A chill ran down my spine. I realized that I was not only haunted by the past, but that I had become a part of this story. The truth I couldn't face gradually emerged: the Ouija board was more than just a tool. It not only connected me to my past, but also to an invisible force that was invading every aspect of my life, controlling my every move, and causing me to lose more and more control. Finally, I began to realize that the inexplicable memories, the inexplicable events, all had a connection that I could not control. This is no ordinary research anymore. This was a life dominated by an entity I could not escape. These increasingly strange notes and inexplicable events only further proved that I had awakened something I had no control over, and now it had completely taken hold of me. Now, I can only live in fear, in constant thoughts about the things that I have called up and cannot banish. And as I continue to record these thoughts, I wonder if I can still keep my head, as the darkness of the force I have awakened slowly devours me little by little. This story, if it can be called a story, never ends. And I will always be a part of that story. But that relief didn't last long. Although I felt a temporary peace, I couldn't deny that something had changed within me. It felt like there was an invisible shadow, a presence that I couldn't touch but could feel from every corner of the apartment. I began to look at everything around me with a new reserve, wondering if things were really the same as before. Late one night, as I sat working on my research materials, I heard a light tapping sound from behind me. At first, I thought it was just the noise of something falling, but when that knocking sound repeated, I felt something was wrong. It wasn't a random sound, but something purposeful, as if trying to get my attention. I stood up and walked towards the source of the noise. The room seemed quieter than ever, and I felt the air thicken, almost palpably. I looked around. There was no one, only darkness creeping in from the dark corners of the room. But then, I saw it, in the corner near my desk, a faint figure stood there, as if watching me. My whole body froze, unable to move. A cold chill ran down my spine, my heart beat so fast it felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. The figure was unclear, but I could feel its presence, like a part of the darkness. I turned around, trying to find a way out of this room, but it was as if my steps were locked to the floor. My eyes began to blur, and in that moment, I heard a voice, small but clear, echoing from the darkness. You opened the door, James. It won't be long before you leave. These words were like a curse, piercing through me, making me unable to move. The cold feeling from my feet gradually spread throughout my body. The scars in my mind began to reappear, and memories that I thought I had long forgotten resurfaced. I ran out of the room, not daring to look back. However, that shadow still followed me closely, seemingly clinging to me, from darkness to light. The next day, I didn't dare return to my office. The Ouija board still lay there was nothing but silence. I don't know if it's a sign of the end of my obsessions, or just part of a long journey I can't escape. Regardless, one thing became clear in my mind: what I had called out could not be easily erased. And now, I'm not just fighting with the past, but with something bigger, stronger, that's slowly invading every corner of my life. My life is no longer mine. What I discovered, however, horrified me. Even though I tested the camera thoroughly, replaced the battery, and adjusted the settings, the black shadow still appeared. In Morrison's post-wedding photo, the shadow was right behind the bride, standing still, but its eyes, there was something strange. It was not the reflection of someone in the crowd, nor was it the shadow of an object nearby. It seemed to be something different. One night, while I was editing photos, I saw that shadow in a particular photo. It was standing near the table where the couple had just cut their wedding cake. Everyone in the photo is smiling happily, but that shadow is completely separate. I can't stop looking at it. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but when I zoomed in on the photo and looked at the smaller details, I discovered something I couldn't explain. That shadow is not just standing still, but it seems to be moving gently, as if it is approaching, stepping closer to the main character in the photo. At that moment, I started to feel a presence around me. The following nights, I heard strange little noises in my room, as if someone was moving in the dark. Sometimes, I feel that shadow's eyes following me, even when I'm not looking at the photo. I began to feel a change in the air, a heavy feeling as if someone was standing right behind me, quietly waiting. At this point, I can't just write this off as a coincidence anymore. I began to learn about supernatural phenomena, about ghosts and souls trapped in this world. And then, in an ancient article, I read something very strange: souls can sometimes fall into a state between life and death, and they can find doors opening through images recorded by machines, as if they can enter physical space through holes in reality. That feeling gets stronger every time I hold the camera. In recent photos, that black shadow is no longer just standing in the distance. It started appearing right in the center of every scene, as if it was trying to dominate every space I recorded. I cannot ignore this presence. Every photo I take becomes a question, a test of the limits of reality and the surreal. One night, when I woke up, I noticed something strange: my camera was open. I turned it off before going to bed, but now it's on and facing me. The heaviness in the room became unbearable. At that moment, I was no longer skeptical. I knew that the shadow was more than just a technical error or a coincidence. It followed me, and now, it took control of my camera. It is changing me, and I am no longer the only one in control of this story. The next photos, I don't know when I took them. I just realized that in each photo, I saw a silhouette that did not belong to this world, a dark shadow silently watching, stretching out from the night, threatening to overwhelm everything. I decided to stop using the camera, but every time I picked it up again, that shadow appeared again. That feeling, that inexplicable watching, grew stronger and stronger. In each photo, the black shadow became clearer and stronger, until it was no longer a shadow, but a living form following my every step. This presence took over me. It exists not only in the photo, but in every fiber of my being. It is a part of me now. And I don't know how to get rid of it. The feeling of terror never stopped. That feeling still sticks with me to this day. The feeling of terror increased. I can't stop. Every time I clicked a photo, I saw myself, lying motionless, unaware that someone was watching. At the 10th photo, I clearly saw a figure standing near my bed, a tall dark figure, with an arm reaching out as if wanting to touch me. I closed my eyes, but couldn't stop. My hand continued to scroll through the photos. In the last photo, that person is standing right next to my bed, a dark shadow, almost blending into the surrounding darkness, with only bright eyes flashing in the quiet space of the room. The coldness in my body engulfed me, and I felt a chill from my fingertips to my spine. I couldn't take it anymore. Camera, that's where I started. This whole series of inexplicable photos is clear evidence that there is a presence watching me, not only through cameras but also in everyday life. I feel that shadow is getting closer, coming to me. Unable to bear it any longer, I called Lisa, but only received a dry reminder that I should rest, take my medicine, and relax. But in my heart, a doubt grew. A vague feeling that what was happening wasn't because I was stressed or losing sleep. There is something here, something inexplicable. With a feeling of desperation, I decided to check the photos one last time. I clicked on the latest photo, and I saw a blurry reflection of myself. In this photo, I wasn't the only one. Behind me, dimly, was the image of that shadow. This time it was clearer than ever. Its eyes flashed in the strange light of the screen, as if it realized I was watching it. When I looked around the apartment again, I felt the air become heavy. The walls seemed to be suffocating my space, making it impossible to breathe. I no longer have the quiet that I once wanted. That feeling, the presence of that shadow, was coming closer. My eyes glued to the screen, I tried to figure out what to do next. But just a second later, my camera turned on again, and I saw what I couldn't believe. A whole series of photos of me, just me, but this time there was no time stamp, no trace of me. Just empty photos, where the other person's shadow takes over everything, as if it is invading every scene. At this point, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. The photos are more than just evidence, they are the message. A message that I was no longer in control. The shadows are not just entering the photos, they are entering my life, taking control of my body and mind. I realized that, perhaps, things had been beyond my control all along. And now, I am no longer the only person who exists in this apartment. That black shadow has replaced me. Each photo captures a different moment, but they form a common story. That shadow is approaching me, not just in the photos, but in my life. I cannot escape it. Every time it appeared in the frame, I felt a change in the air, as if the space around me had been distorted. The last photo made me stop, gasping for air. In that photo, the black shadow did not just stand at the edge of the frame like before. It came close to my bed, its long hand stretched out, the air around me became thick, making it difficult to breathe. For a moment, I could feel its cold breath, even though I couldn't feel its presence outside of these photos. That night, I couldn't sleep. My camera still lies next to my bed, an undeniable proof of what I'm going through. I can't think of any logical reason for these strange phenomena. All I know is that shadow is still following me, and it won't stop until I'm no longer myself. The next day, I decided not to go to work, even though I felt a need to get out, to search for answers. I went into an antique store and found a strange book about old rituals. This book is about entities that can penetrate the human body and mind, creatures that exist at the border between dimensions, that can only be summoned through special tools such as Ouija boards. The more I read, the more strange memories I felt came back. Pieces of the puzzle that I had never understood were now becoming clear. When I returned to my apartment, I noticed a small but important change. The living room window opened, revealing thick streaks of darkness, as if a layer of black dust was settling. Every step I take in this house feels like a step further into the darkness. At night, I noticed that the tapping sounds of the stick were not only coming from the photos, but were also echoing in the air. I couldn't sleep. All my senses felt stretched, fear hindering my every breath. I decided to do something, if only to keep my mind from completely falling apart. I took the camera, reinstalled it in the room and told myself I had to record what was happening. But as soon as I started filming, something changed. The camera appears to have been manipulated, not only recording images but also distorting them. The shadows in the room gradually became denser, interwoven with strange images that I could not explain. Every new photo I take has that silhouette, but it's not just a black silhouette. Its eyes began to appear, inexplicably. It was a sharp gaze, as if it was trying to connect with me, connect with the hidden parts of my mind. The feeling of being watched has become an indispensable part of my daily life. And I know that, when I look at the photos, I see more than just a silhouette. I saw myself gradually disappearing, replaced by something undeniable. And that shadow, invisible, but always present, will not leave until I am completely it. This constant fear had such a strong hold on me that I couldn't shake it off even for a minute. I know I can't hide forever. That entity, the shadow in every photo, the shadow I couldn't look directly at without feeling like I was being swallowed whole by it, wouldn't leave me alone. I felt that presence, not only through the camera, but also in every dark corner of the house, every fragment of reality that I was trying to piece together. I stopped the car on the side of the road, under a large bridge, where the dim light could not penetrate the thick dark clouds in the sky. My eyes are blurry from lack of sleep and stress. I can't think clearly anymore. But in my heart, a decision was formed. Taking my camera out of my backpack, I looked at it one last time, as if it were the only thing left holding me back in this world. The dark lenses reflected the dim light of the afternoon, making me feel a strange weight. It's a normal camera, nothing special. But now, it's not a creative tool anymore. It is a door. Don't do this, the voice in my head warned, but I couldn't stop. Don't continue. I placed my camera on the ground, clenched my fist, and for the first time, I actually looked at the lens. I know I will never be able to return to a normal life. Not after what happened. Not when I invited that shadow into my life. I will never be able to erase that look, those photos. And now, I have to find a way to end everything. With a strong decision, I turned the camera and pressed firmly on its corner. They don't work. The entity cannot be destroyed with a single blow. It is something that cannot be easily forgotten or destroyed. I feel like I'm digging myself into a deep hole, but I can't stop. I ran home, for the first time in days, trying to hide all the evidence, all that I had done. That night, in a bad sleep, I dreamed that I was in a dark room. The camera is in my hand, but the photos never end. That entity continues to search. And now, I can no longer control it. But when I woke up the next morning, the camera was no longer there. And the darkness continued to find me. Just a few days ago, I could not have imagined that my life would be drawn into such a bizarre spiral. The shadow kept following me, no matter what I did, I couldn't escape it. And now, when I look at that mark, I realize it is like a warning, something carved into the bark to convey an ancient message, perhaps from the very beings who passed through the world of the camera. Concentric circles, jagged lines as if asking me to continue my journey. The camera in my hand remained cold, as if it had a soul of its own, able to see me even when I wasn't looking at it. The next photos all have inexplicable changes. The scenes are still the same, but they are no longer reflective like before. Instead, there was something in the photos, something shadowy, like a sign, a message from a place I never wanted to go. I began to follow the carvings in the oak tree, which I now seemed unable to leave. The circles seemed to chart a course, each cut led me closer into a world where reality and illusion intertwine. Drops of sap flowed from the engravings, glistening like drops of dried blood. Every time I touched it, I felt a pull, as if I were caught in a whirlwind that I couldn't escape. As my flashlight shined, I noticed what looked like another character, a sign, but it wasn't a language I understood. Its appearance was unlike anything I had ever seen. It resembled a writing system that I could not identify, but had an intense appeal that kept me learning. Suddenly, I realized I was standing very close to an underground door, an underground tunnel that I had never seen before. It led into darkness, into a subterranean world that I couldn't deny. Fear welled up in me as I wondered if I was ready to go in there. However, I knew that I couldn't stop anymore. That shadow has been following me for too long, and now, perhaps it's time to face the truth. I took the camera, once again pointed it into the darkness, and pressed the shutter button. The image that appeared on the screen was not what I expected. Instead, it showed me a door, a dark entrance, a door that I couldn't see when my eyes were open. And there, in the darkness, might be what I have been looking for, or what is looking for me. This was the moment I couldn't turn back. Fear tormented me, but curiosity was stronger. I must know. I can't live with these questions anymore. So I stepped into the darkness, camera in hand, and a cold feeling enveloped me as I entered the place where reality and nightmares mingle. With every step I took, I felt a presence getting closer, perhaps right behind me, following me with every step. And in that moment, I understood that I was not simply taking photos. I was becoming part of the picture, part of a story I couldn't escape, a story that even when I wanted to end it, it continued. I continued into the darkness, step by step, with my camera still in hand. The sounds of the outside world seemed to become vague and blurred like the images in the lens. Every step I took made the space around me become more cramped, as if the darkness was narrowing, pressing me closer to something I couldn't identify. The light from the camera faded, and when I looked at the screen, I saw nothing but a dark, empty space, but for a brief moment, I noticed a blurred image, a door, a figure standing behind. Not me, not anyone I know. A person stood there, motionless, without a face, only darkness swallowing them. Suddenly, I felt like I was being pulled down. An invisible force invaded my body, pulling me into this darkness. My steps don't seem to be mine anymore. The camera, now, is not a tool, but an invisible string pulling me towards it. My palms were sweaty, and I realized a terrifying truth: I couldn't take it back anymore. That entity, the one who took my picture, the one who created everything, not only sought me out, but also entered me. I became a part of it. At this moment, I understood that the shadow in the photo was not my reflection, but the waiting of a force that I could not deny. It's the separation between what I once was and what I will become. The photos, the silhouettes, all are part of a story that I cannot escape, no matter how hard I try to escape. And when I stood in front of that door, I knew there was no choice left. The camera in my hand is no longer a tool to capture moments, but a gateway to this world, the world I opened to myself when I took my first photos. A bright light burst from the camera screen, so blinding that I couldn't open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes again, there was nothing, not darkness, not separation anymore. There was just a quiet void, as if I had completely disappeared, along with everything I once was. And in that darkness, only photos remained. Photos that I took, photos that I no longer own. The story has ended, but I cannot say that I have escaped. Because I know, everything remains in the light of the camera.